Good morning, everyone. We're here for the Big Nemaha Watershed Discovery Meeting. My name is Deanna Ringenberg. I'm an engineer in the Nebraska Department of Natural Resources Floodplain Division. We have some other people from Floodplain here. Jamie is an engineer. She does a lot of model review and she's also on the project management side. Michelle York is our administrative assistant. She sent out the reminder emails and the invitations for this presentation. She also probably got in touch with you for your contact information. And Mackenzie is running the Zoom for us. She's great with this stuff. So I'm going to have Adele introduce herself because she will be doing part of the presentation.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Adele Phillips, and I'm the flood mitigation planner for the state of Nebraska. And I'll do a little 10-minute segment later on in the presentation.
Okay, thanks, Adele. Now I'm going to go through and I have a list of communities here. We'll do like a little bit of a roll call. If you could let us know what your title is, and then also let us know if there's someone in the room with you joining, if you have a clerk or a mayor. That way we can get that person onto our sign-up sheet that we send out to FEMA later, just to let FEMA know that we were in contact with you. So as I say your name, make sure to unmute yourself. If you're having trouble with unmuting yourself, you can put that in the chat as well. And since we had people register, if you're unable to do either of those things, you should be okay since you registered. But okay, I'm gonna go through the counties first. Do we have anybody from Lancaster County? No.
Yes.
Yes.
This is Karen Wilson. Sorry, my screen was hiding my mute button there.
Oh, you're fine.
And I had to change rooms, so I missed what information you asked us to share.
Oh, yeah, just share. It stinks you have to go first if you missed it. Just your title.
Okay, I'm Karen Wilson. I'm with Lancaster County Engineering, and I'm the Special Projects Engineer.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the room with you joining?
No, there is not right now.
Okay.
Larry Legg may be joining, but he is not on right now,
Okay.
to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. Thanks, Karen. All right. Anybody from Gage County? Okay. Anybody from Johnson County?
Yes, this is Janelle Moran, City Clerk at Tecumseh.
All right.
Hi, this is Amanda Berkey with Johnson Pawnee County Emergency Management for Johnson and Pawnee.
Okay.
And then I'm John Kaiser, Village Board Chair for Sterling, Village of Sterling.
Okay. And then Pawnee County?
We'll be representing Pawnee County for emergency management also.
Okay. All right, let's go through villages. I think we had some mentioned already. Is there anybody from the village of Panama? Okay. Hallam? Cortland? Firth?
Jill Hofler, clerk for the village of Firth.
Good. All right, thank you very much. And do you have anybody in your room with you, Jill?
I do not.
Okay. Adams? Is that already mentioned? Is there anyone from Adams? Okay. I think someone already mentioned Sterling, right?
Correct, John Kaiser, Village Board Chair.
Okay, thank you. Crab Orchard. And I think Tecumseh was already mentioned. Is there anyone else from Tecumseh? Okay. Elk Creek. And then Pawnee City was already mentioned, right? Anybody else from Pawnee City? Okay, and then Table Rock. All right, do we have anybody from NEMA, the Nebraska Emergency Management Agency?
Yes, hi, I'm Sarah Jackson. I am the Hazard Mitigation Planning Specialist for NEMA. I just started about 5 months ago, so I'm still getting used to everything.
All right, thanks. And is there anybody joining with you?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. Anybody for any NRDs? Okay.
Chuck Wingert here from the Nemaha NRD,
Okay, thank you.
Resource Manager.
Okay. And then what about DOT? All right. And then who do we have from FEMA?
Hi, this is Emily Hatcher with FEMA Region 7 office in Kansas City. I'm the Floodplain Management Specialist supporting the state of Nebraska. And I think we have Lori on as well.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Laurie Bestien, also with FEMA out of Region 7 in Kansas City. And I'm the work in the risk map program, primarily supporting the state of Nebraska. Good morning, all.
Good morning, thanks. And who do we miss? I think we had a couple people come in late, so just we're going through, unmute yourself, let us know what community you're with and what your title is, and if you have anyone else in your room who is joining with us. I think I saw Kyle come in.
Yeah, good morning. Sorry, I got kicked out. I'm on my phone. Somebody called as I was on the line, but Kyle Hochschild with the Nemaha NRD.
Okay. Anyone else I missed? And you can put that in the chat if your video isn't working or your audio or anything. So, all right. I am going to move on. Thanks, everybody. So here is a little bit of our agenda for today. First, we're going to just talk about the National Flood Insurance Program and Risk Map. And then we'll go into the actual discovery portion of it. We'll talk about the information that we've gathered through the discovery. And then really the biggest part for us is listening to your input. We will share some of our early maps for this remapping project. And we really just want to get some feedback from you guys to see if the boundary is what you would expect considering past floods. And then we will have a little portion where we'll talk about how Nebraska DNR can help you guys and the services that we provide to help with your flood mitigation, with help manage your flood risk. And then we'll go on to talking about what happens next in this whole mapping process. So we're going to start with the NFIP and risk map. And I have a little video here.
It's a very dramatic moment when water begins to enter your house. Certainly something I'll never forget. It rose over a 3-day period to be 32 inches high. It stayed like that for approximately 5 or 6 days. We were taking a boat into the house and checking the water level and measuring it.
Flooding can happen anywhere. And in Houston in 2017, it didn't just happen in high-risk areas. It happened in a lot of lower-risk areas too.
Harvey reinforced a very key statistic. Oftentimes, the homes that flood during these rain events are outside of the 100-year floodplain. So you are not safe and not immune to flooding if you're not in a 100-year or 500-year floodplain. Many of my neighbors that were outside the 500-year floodplain did not quite understand their risk of flooding.
When it came time to return home and clean up, many in Houston didn't have the resources to recover and rebuild.
This is your house, the place where all your children have been raised. You have to get it back. We're a middle-class community. Most of us are not in a position where we have available funding to recover from a major event. It's a tremendous financial burden.
In 1968, Congress created the National Flood Insurance Program, or NFIP. At the time, there weren't many affordable options for private flood insurance, especially for people living in high-risk areas. The government recognized a need for a more affordable program to help communities manage flood risk, no matter their risk level, and help reduce their risk of flooding in the future. Today, FEMA programs like the NFIP help communities and property owners better understand their flood risk and how risk can change. Using flood risk data and maps, communities can decide how to reduce their risk in ways that work best for them.
The rebuilding process really starts with your engagement with flood insurance. Thank goodness we were able to count on that for our recovery. We plan to live in this house for a very long time. We love the community, our families here. This is our home.
Learn more about how the National Flood Insurance Program can help your community understand and reduce risk. Visit fema.gov/mitigation.
So risk map. The Nebraska Department of Natural Resources is a CTP, which means we're a cooperating technical partner. That just means that we are tasked with mapping the state of Nebraska. We do the mapping and then we'll send it out to FEMA, and FEMA will review it and then host those maps. We work together in conjunction with the National Flood Insurance Program, and risk map is really the process of developing these maps and then sometimes making them effective regulatory maps. The first step is mapping. So that's just creating the maps. That's what we do here at the Nebraska Department of Natural Resources. And then you can go on to use those maps to identify where the risk is. And then once you've identified the risk, you can plan your communities around that risk. So floodplain maps, the maps are actually called FIRMs, which stands for Flood Insurance Rate Maps. The floodplains have lots of different names. They're called Special Flood Hazard Areas, or SFHAs, sometimes just referred to as floodplains. And then there's Zone A and Zone AE and regulatory maps. So these are all just different ways that we use to refer to areas that have a higher flood risk. All of these areas have a 1% annual chance of flooding. We used to refer to these more as the 100-year floodplain, but we thought people kind of had the misconception that, well, it flooded in 2019, we need to wait until 2119 for another flood. And that's just not how it is. Every year you have that 1% chance of flooding. It's like pulling the lever of a slot machine. You always have that same chance of maybe getting the jackpot. And any of these homes that are in these floodplains are required to have flood insurance if they have a federally backed mortgage. And as that video showed, flooding still happens outside of these floodplains. You can still buy flood insurance if you're outside of that floodplain at a reduced rate. So these are just the different ways that the maps are used. Identifying risk, the maps are used to establish the rates for insurance and then inform engineers and developers developing inside the floodplain or outside the floodplain how you want to plan around the floodplains. And then equipping emergency managers. So that could be like putting the shelter for people who are displaced during flooding away from the flood and in a place that would be accessible to everybody during that flood. The reason that we update these maps is because flood risk can change. That can change due to development. If you have like a parking lot, now that land can't absorb the water like it used to, and it can run off and create more water in the rivers. Rivers can move. We saw that quite a lot in the 2019 flood on the Elkhorn River. The channel changed quite a bit. And then structures in the river can change it, like dams, bridges, those kinds of things can affect the way the river floods. And now we have a newer technology that can make these maps much more precise and accurate to the flooding. The maps in this area were updated in 2005 and 2013. In 2013 doesn't sound that long ago, but that area is actually the Lancaster County area, and we have newer elevation maps for that area in 2017. So we have a lot better picture of what the land looks like now. These new maps will be easier to read and more precise. You see in this old map, we just kind of had this whole area flooding. But with these new maps, it kind of goes how the water would more, like flowing through this area and then up the roads. And that's kind of how you see flooding happen a lot, where the roads are the lower area and the water can just flow up it. Okay, so now we're gonna have our first poll. How often do you check your community's floodplain maps? And I will show you guys how to access them. So please be honest, and hopefully everyone will know how to use them or how to find them at the end of this presentation. Okay, great. I like the honesty here. So yeah, and I will be showing you guys how to get to those maps. And if you have any problems, you can always call us later. Monthly, yearly, I think that's pretty reasonable because you're not necessarily having development in the floodplain all the time. So I think that's great. Okay, so now we're going to move more into the discovery. So risk map is the whole process of going from the beginning to potentially effective maps. Discovery is the first step. That's what we're in right now. The big thing about discovery is just listening to you guys. You're the experts here. You know how your town floods and what your town looks like in a flood. So we want to gather as much information as we can from you guys. And that includes like high water marks, if you have survey that's been done, and even like photos of flooding, we can look at those and that can help us inform our mapping. And then we really want you guys to let us know of any development that could happen in your community that can affect the floodplain maps. If you have a big shopping center, big housing development coming in. And then Adele is going to talk a little bit about how you can work with us to help reduce your risk during this meeting. So now moving on, here's what we've gathered. And a lot of this information is in the discovery report. I won't really go into it right here. If you have any questions, let me know and I can go into them further. But really the biggest thing is this LiDAR data. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but the LiDAR data is the elevation maps that we use. And it's a lot finer, it's a lot easier, it's a lot more precise. And in this watershed, the LiDAR was flown in 2010 and 2017. We have a couple different data sets that we've used. BLE is base level engineering, and we've conducted the initial BLE for your area. Here's the shape of the watershed. Nemaha and Richardson have already been mapped, so that's why they are not included in this. And towards the end of the presentation, I'll go over what we found in that BLE. So BLE is base level engineering. We map these watersheds at the watershed wide scale. And it's a pretty accurate depiction of the flood risk. And in Nebraska, these BLEs will be used to make the regulatory zone A boundaries in the end. So it is certainly subject to change, but it'll probably be pretty similar to what we have right now, the final floodplain boundaries. The discovery report that was sent out February 4th. That link that I sent out has 30 days before it expires. So I think you have probably until Friday if you want to open that up and provide any comments to me. I think we actually got a lot of good comments on this one. And it really goes through all this information that we've gathered up into this point. It was created in part with JEO. I also received a lot of good surveys from this watershed. If you are not on this list and you'd like to be included, let me know or let Mackenzie know or anybody on this, and we will send it out and you can get that to us as soon as possible. The surveys actually go into the final report, and so does information from this meeting. So we kind of want to get that turned around as quickly as possible. But thanks to everybody who returned those surveys. We got a lot of good responses. Okay. Here's a poll. What is BLE? Wow, that's great. I'm happy. Yeah, so BLE is the mapping that we use to create zone A boundaries. One thing that I didn't touch on as much as I should is that the BLE can change, and as you're looking at your maps, if you think there's something that's not quite right, let us know, and we can actually go in and change it or look at it and decide if it needs to be changed for free. Later in the process, you have to go through like a formal FEMA review. You might have to pay an engineer. So really, this is the time to look at your maps and provide us with any feedback you can. We have to do everything based on engineering analysis, so we might not be able to include your comment, but we will definitely look into it. And it is definitely free for us to do that.
Thanks, Deanna. So I work, as stated earlier, I'm the flood mitigation planner with Department of Natural Resources. Prior to doing this work, I did work at the local government level, county and town planning, as a land use planner, reviewing floodplain development permits, building permits, conditional use permits, that sort of thing. So I know what it's like to inform the public about, well, that regulations exist, and sometimes they might not be in concert with the property owner's vision for what they can do. So I'm here today to talk a little bit more about the other ways that DNR can serve you, and also about the idea of mitigation. So overall, our department, our floodplain management section within the Department of Natural Resources, coordinates floodplain management across the state of Nebraska. We provide a variety of technical assistance to NFIP participating communities and communities that are going through these mapping processes. So next slide, please. We know that flooding is a hazard that we have to deal with. It's not a hypothetical in Nebraska. Floodplains are inherently hazardous. Across the state, flooding is the most frequently reported hazard in the state of Nebraska. We know that in the life of across a 30-year mortgage, a home in a special flood hazard area has a better than 1 in 4 chance of experiencing a flooding. We also know in Nebraska that our climate models are showing that we're going to get wetter and that our storm events are going to increase in frequency, intensity, and scale, as well as decrease in predictability, meaning we have less capability of anticipating when they will occur, and our cycles are being disrupted. So we have a known risk, and we have that data. We know where that risk geographically occurs in the states. So the combination of this knowledge is, and our technical expertise, is to help your communities make informed decisions to keep you safe, keep your community members safe, protect property, as well as preserve the natural floodplain functions of these natural places. So how we do that is through mitigation measures. Next slide, please. And so what I have here is a categorization of different ways to mitigate. In future presentations, I know we've got another one scheduled for your area pretty quick here, I think. I'll delve into more details about the variety of mitigation measures you can implement, but there's a whole lot of things a community can do to help keep them safe and preserve the functions of the floodplain. Some of them are updating your ordinance, or and making public information available, such as having these maps available, and others may be structural related, figuring out ways to design or build our infrastructure to ameliorate flooding instances. So next slide, please. So getting back to the services that we provide, in addition to carrying forward these mapping projects, if you're a floodplain administrator and you need a determination as to where the base flood elevation is in a location, we can provide that information for you. Deanna is going to walk you through our interactive map that's available 24/7 on the Department of Natural Resources website, where floodplain administrators can request base flood elevation determinations. You can also see what base flood elevation determinations have been issued previously and are current. If you through this mapping project, models are developed, and through a process called real-time technical assistance, we can look at discrete areas of flooding and help a community identify a specific solution to that flooding. Perhaps it's increasing the diameter of a culvert or cross-sectional area of a culvert so that it reduces some local flooding. We can also help educate others in local government as to how this data can be incorporated into your local planning in your efforts to I don't know, cultivate smart land use, I guess, in the area. Sometimes a project proponent will submit to your office some engineering analysis, or maybe it's a letter of map revision application, and maybe you are not comfortable reviewing those engineering documents or don't have that expertise in-house. Well, you can reach out to us and we will review that engineering for you, ensuring that it's up to standard and is accurate. One thing we can't do is that we won't design solutions. A project proponent is responsible for coming up with whatever approach is applicable in any given context. We will evaluate their methods, but we won't design the solution for them, if that makes sense. Next slide, please. Other things we can do with this information is to help you figure out ways to reduce your flood risk. This is where getting to that implementation of mitigation measures. Both the Department of Natural Resources as well as NEMA, Nebraska Emergency Management Agency, help administer federal funds to protect property from flood hazard. These are funds that support the removal of structures from the floodplain, as well as elevating them out of the floodplain. So we can help you reach out to us with an idea or an effort that your jurisdiction is trying to implement, and we'll help you identify the appropriate or applicable funding resource to support that effort. We'll do more information in subsequent meetings about different funding sources. We also provide a wide range of training. We do, and in this last year, we've shifted over to virtual trainings now, and we do basic floodplain management. We co-host insurance related trainings. So we're always available to help disseminate information about flood risk and what can be done. Every 5 years in Nebraska, communities are required to update their local hazard mitigation plans. In Nebraska, we have a lot of multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plans, which are initiatives led by the Departments of Natural Resources, not the Departments of Natural Resources, the NRDs, the Natural Resources Districts. This is a really important opportunity for emergency managers and floodplain administrators to work together to identify and capture in these documents appropriate mitigation measures for your jurisdictions. And then by being captured in those mitigation plans, these measures can be leveraged for financial support. So, we do review those local hazard mitigation plans and provide comments. Again, it's an important opportunity for emergency managers and floodplain administrators to work together. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, flood insurance trainings are co-hosted on April 15th. So just over a month and a half from now, we are going to be co-hosting a flood insurance training regarding FEMA's new risk rating 2.0 insurance approach. And we also support the community rating system program, which you may have heard about, is referred to as CRS. This is a program through FEMA where Flood insurance policyholders can enjoy reduced rates in their flood insurance policy fees as a result of the community reporting on the various mitigation measures that they've implemented. So a community gets points for how many actions they are implementing, and then the benefit of those points is passed on to the flood insurance policyholders. The Department of Natural Resources can help you get enrolled in that process or in CRS. And we can also, afterwards in your reporting phases, we can help you identify points that are available to your community as a result of the state just going about its our provision of services, such as having our interactive maps and other things available online. We have a dam safety program. All of these help a community get points towards the CRS system and thus enjoying reduced rates in flood insurance. Next slide, please. Okay, and another category of services is in just your day-to-day floodplain management. We get questions all the time from community members asking how to appropriately or consistently apply your floodplain management ordinance in the review of proposed development, or understand what it means on the ground. Though we take calls every day, and no question, all questions are valid. It doesn't matter how silly it may seem. Feel free to give us a call at any time and ask us what the appropriate way is to interpret the code in this place. We also help with the enforcement of floodplain management regulations. Sometimes development occurs and it's done without benefit of permit, and a community needs to resolve that situation as part of its agreement with to be in the National Flood Insurance Program. So we can help you work with the property owners to find a path forward to sort of rectify those situations. And then lastly, on the occasion of a disaster, we can help you appropriately or correctly implement disaster response actions. There's a special process called substantial damage assessment that needs to be implemented if any disaster, not just flood, any disaster damages structures within the special flood hazard area. We've just released on Monday of this week, we just released a step-by-step guide, a handbook called the Substantial Damage Assessment Handbook that's freely available on our website that walks you through that process. It also has a lot of advice for things that a community can do as sunny day activities. These are things kind of clerical activities or preparatory activities that can be done in a non-emergency response setting, so that you know you're prepared in the event of a disaster. And again, we know flooding happens, so it's smart to do things ahead of time. We are also, for the floodplain administrators, we are hosting a training coming up in 2 weeks, March 18th. It's a 2-hour training from 1 to 3 p.m. That's free. And we are going to go over the substantial damage assessment process. Oh, and one last resource I haven't mentioned is we have a quarterly newsletter that goes out, and it's sent via email. And this is also the mechanism by which we announce our free virtual trainings. We also send out announcements about applicable trainings hosted by our neighboring states. So if you aren't receiving our newsletter or getting these email notifications, please reach out to us and we'll make sure you get signed up. So with that, we'll move on to our poll question. I'd like to know what DNR services do you utilize? Please select all that apply. I think we've got this poll functioning today. Yes, last meeting, it was only select one, but if it doesn't work, let us know. All right, it looks like base flood elevation requests and attending trainings are pretty popular or common, and ordinance review and adoption and floodplain permitting review. On ordinance review and adoption, I don't think I clarified that earlier, but when new maps come into play or are finalized, a community does need to update its ordinance appropriately, and we will help you with that. We review your ordinances for you. Some communities may want to implement some optional higher standards. We look at that and help you ensure that everything's kosher. What was another thing there? Yeah, but we've got a wide range of services. Don't be shy about reaching out to us. And with that, I'll pass it back to Deanna.
Okay, thanks, Adele. Now we're going to look at the new BLE maps. So I'm going to pull up a browser and I'm just going to show you how to get there. So here, Chrome, I think works the best for this, but you go to any internet browser and you type in dnr.nebraska.gov and hit enter. And it will take you to the Capitol building here. There should be a water fountain. And you can go ahead and play along if you want, if you have a separate screen that you want to get to these maps with me. So once you see the Capitol building, you can scroll down to Floodplain Management. Click on that. And then here you see this washed out bridge. Scroll down again to Interactive Maps. Click on that. And then here we have the Floodplain Interactive Map. So that's what we're going to be looking at. There'll be a pop-up window and you just, you can read through that, but then click agree and hit continue. And here you can see all of our projects. This guy right here is the big Nemaha Watershed. So I'm going to zoom into that. And you can see all the communities. I have one pulled up already, just so everything's all loaded. This is the village of Sterling. When you look at this, you can go to different layers. You click on this little thing that looks like a sandwich, and that'll bring all the layers. Sometimes I notice when I'm on a smaller monitor, this is compressed, and there's like a little button here to get all these other layers. So that might be something that wouldn't happen on your computer. There are a lot of layers on this. What we really want to look at right now are the community boundaries and then the Nemaha Flood Awareness Area. That is your BLE. So that is the mapping that we've done on this wide watershed level. It's subject to change and it might become effective. And I don't think I've mentioned this watershed isn't officially funded to have effective maps with FEMA. We expect that it probably will, but that is a chance that we won't actually go all the way through to the effective maps for this watershed. So as we're looking, and this Nemaha Flood Awareness Area also might change and become part of this flood awareness area. So if you're looking at this later and this Nemaha Flood Awareness Area is not here, go ahead and click on the Flood Awareness Area. But we just uploaded it to our map, so it ended up being a separate layer. So the National Flood Hazard Layer is what your maps are right now. I'm going to turn off community boundaries just for a second. So in the village of Sterling, this is what you've been regulating to. And then the flood awareness area is our new proposed map. So we have some areas that were previously in the floodplain, which are now out. One thing about this flood awareness area as well is that we have this orange color. The orange color is the 0.2% floodplain. It's also known as the 500-year floodplain. So if you live in that area, you're not required to have flood insurance, but we like to let people know that their risk could potentially be higher if there's a really, really big flood coming through. And those people might be encouraged to buy flood insurance, and they can get it at that reduced rate because they're not in that regulatory floodplain. So I really encourage you guys to look at this map in the next week or as soon as possible. And please share it with people if you want to bring it to a city council board meeting, or bring it to the mayor, bring it to anybody and show them and let us know if there's anything you say, oh gosh, well, this area always floods or this area never floods. We'll look into that and see how that we have to back it by engineering analysis. So we might not include it, but we will certainly look into it. There's lots of different ways that you can let us know if you have any issues or that you see that the boundary isn't as accurate. You can go to this right here, the floodplain boundary comments, and you'll have to turn on that floodplain boundary review comment layer. And you can actually draw. So you have to click right here to draw. If you say like, oh, this area floods. So now I can click on that and I can put my comment in. I put my name. I'm not going to save it. And then we would look into that. The comments the shape of the comment that you draw will be visible to other people, but only we will be able to see that comment. So that's one way to do it. Another way would just be to contact us, give us a phone call, send us an email. Just let us know if you have any comments. When we do this in person, we actually print out the maps and give people Sharpies to draw on them. So we get a lot of comments and we will look at all of them. Another thing you can do with this map is if you turn on this BFE determination layer, you can click and then view BFE determination. And here's the valid BFE for that section. We do have some areas in this watershed that have quite a lot of change as far as the floodplains go. I had Adams circled to look at. I don't think anyone from Adams is here right now, but this area we saw a lot of change. And again, these are subject to change and we'll look into them more. We always go with a real fine-tooth comb in all of the villages, but if you can see here, this is what their maps look like right now. And these are the BLE maps. So there's parts of Adams that are in there that previously were not. Okay, so as you're looking at these, again, check your community boundaries, see if that matches what your ETJ is. Let us know if you have any development or if you've had any development really in the past 5 to 10 years. Some of these areas, the LIDAR, the elevation data was flown in 2011. So really anything since 2011, let us know about if you're planning on changing that ETJ.
Engineering work. So there will be a meeting scheduled probably in the next couple months. It'll be pretty quick after this. It'll be an official kickoff meeting to the engineering phase. So we do this BLE, which is part of the engineering phase, but FEMA really uses that in most states to determine where boundaries need to be updated, where regulatory maps need to be updated. So in the kickoff meeting and the second meeting we have in the engineering phase, the flood risk review meeting, we really get into a more detailed discussion about how the mapping is created and all of the different steps that are involved in the mapping project.
I'm also wondering too, she was asking too about the satellite imagery. Is that also have to do with which layer she has turned on, Jamie?
Yes, it could be. If you're looking in our interactive map, there are some different base map layers that can be turned on or off. The work that we're doing on the engineering side, we would have certain aerial imagery that we're using. We have the LIDAR files that we pull in that would show that terrain data underneath. And when we get into the later phases of the engineering work, the community will see some of those layers too. Specifically, if we are able to fund regulatory maps, we do a public open house that residents can come in and we go to specific properties and we can show them the LIDAR up against the engineering, the floodplain boundaries so that they can see exactly what that looks like. If anyone has an interest in seeing that data, it's available. It's not like DNR controls that data. It's statewide data that's available. So just let us know.
One thing that I didn't touch on is that Tecumseh and
Also,
FERC,
some of the layers, I know it's in the interactive when we get more into it, but as you noticed, Sarah, as we zoomed in, some of the satellite came through.
So Mackenzie was saying that some of the layers will disappear as you zoom in. So they're map scale dependent. So some don't appear until you zoom close enough in, and some will disappear when you zoom too close in. We've actually had some issues with our flood awareness area disappearing when you zoom too far in, and we're working to address that so that you can zoom a little farther in before that layer disappears, which is part of the reason why you see a different flood awareness area for this project area right now. We're trying to test a few things to see what's working best to get that layer to stay loaded in the background. Deanna, is your connection working again?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And one of the big things, and I don't know, maybe you guys got into it, I was having issues, but Firth and Tecumseh are having, or will get enhanced studies. So the map that you see with this flood awareness area or BLE won't match that very well at all. So if you're in Firth and Tecumseh, just take that with a grain of salt and know that that boundary will change. We'll have an engineer look at that, the flooding situation there, and create a model. It's a really in-depth process. So you guys will have a really accurate depiction of the flooding. So Firth and Tecumseh are those communities.
Yeah, and the main difference between the BLE or Zone A mapping and those enhanced studies is the enhanced study uses a different type of modeling. It's still a similar type of analysis, but in the enhanced areas, we're adding culverts and bridges. We're getting survey of channels so that we have accurate information about how deep those channels are. In the basic areas, because it's such a widespread study, there's just not a way for us to go out and collect all of that information on every structure, every flow line within a watershed. So any area that has an enhanced study currently through FEMA's program gets an enhanced study moving forward. So that's how Tecumseh and Firth were both identified to receive that particular update.
Yeah, so you guys' maps will look more similar to this, where you'll have a floodway and all that stuff. So you would continue to have that. Okay. So as you're looking at the maps, here's things to keep an eye out for. We've kind of brushed over all of these. So if anything looks wrong, or if you have any comments, let us know and we will look into that. Going ahead, here's the timeline for this risk map. Discovery here is at the beginning. That's where we're at right now. We're going to move very quickly into this next step. So be on the lookout. We'll have another meeting actually pretty soon. Preliminary is when the maps start to go into more of a county-wide level. Here we're working at a watershed level, but then here it's more of a county. And then here's where maps go preliminary. There'll be a formal review process. We really want to make sure that we have any comments on the mapping kind of before this time. That's when we haven't submitted as much to FEMA. It's just really easy for us to look into things, and it is free for us to look into it. And then here is when the final maps come. You'll have your final firms. Again, this watershed isn't fully funded to go to those final firms. We expect that it will be, but there's a potential that it will not, that you'll just have this BLE data to look at. So going forward, your homework is to let us know, look at those maps, call us if you have any problems getting to them, and share those maps with anyone that you think might have some input on it, even like the town historian or whoever you think might have some input. We will look into anything. And then if you need help with any of the mitigation things that Adele discussed, let us know. We will have a story map for this project. We don't have it created right now, but here's what our story maps look like. This is one for the West Fork Big Blue Watershed, and it just kind of lets you know where we're at in the process. This watershed will have some flood risk data. We'll talk about those in future meetings. Those are kind of cool little tools you can use to help plan or help understand your flood risk and help the community understand. So really the biggest thing is it's free for us to look into things right now. So provide everything that you can. We'll look into it. You don't have to spend money or time or stress later down the road doing engineer analyses. We have a group of engineers who will look at it for you. Next steps going forward, we will collect everything that you give us. We'll finalize the discovery report, so we'll include information from this meeting, and we will keep you informed with emails and story maps, and we'll keep working on your floodplain boundaries. We have the enhanced studies for this area in Tecumseh and Firth that we're working on. And we'll work on flood risk products, which, like I said, we'll talk about in a future meeting. Okay, any questions? And feel free to ask, like, we don't need to necessarily talk about discovery. If you have another question about something else that you think we might be able to help with, that's what we're here for. So either unmute yourself and ask a question or go ahead and put it in the chat. Okay. If you have any questions going forward, give us a call, send us an email, write us a letter. We'll look at it. And here's our contact information. So this is me, and then Jamie and Adele. So thanks so much for coming. Last chance for any more questions. Okay. All right, well, since there are no questions, I think we will end this meeting. Thank you everybody for coming. Sorry for my technical difficulties. That's kind of the age of Zoom right now that we're in. Glad that I was able to come back and join at the end. So thanks everybody and have a great day.